Welcome to this module on building your own SEO strategy. We're about to dive deep into the nuts and bolts of building your SEO plan and truly looking at what's important and what can wait. In Module 2, we'll look at the importance of doing a discovery phase at the beginning of your SEO, considering exactly what your website has to offer, understanding what it takes to know your competitive health status, and looking at the SEO differences found in each industry. You might be surprised to hear that there was a disagreement on Twitter. Not too long ago, I read an article on Search Engine Journal by Adam Reimer, also known as Rollerblader, about whether you should first build content on your website or get people to link to you, known in SEO as backlinks. Adam was adamant that it was content, and I argued that it really depends. Content may not be the best thing to work on for your website. Let me explain my answer. But first, you need to understand how SEO used to work. When I started, SEO was super simple. You had a website. You did some keyword research, created a 300 to 500 word article. You put the terms people searched, known as keywords, all over your web page. You built a ton of links to your page and your site, and you were pretty much good to go. Today, things are much more complicated. You still have a website, but before you go off and start doing SEO on it, you need to determine what it offers, if it's healthy enough to compete against big competitors, and the differences you need to know about your industry. Once you've determined these things, you'll collect all the data you can about those who visit or will visit your website from search. After you've collected as much data as you can, you'll go to the heart of your SEO strategy and evaluate your content and backlink strategies. These strategies will be directly influenced by the information you have gathered to this point. You'll consider exactly what is most valuable to your website and also who is valuable to your website through partnerships. All of this will lead you to determine which of the 3 pillars of SEO you should work on first: technical SEO, on-page SEO, and or off-page SEO. Each of these pillars will go into depth in later modules. To help you better understand this whole diagram, you can divide it into 4 sections. First, discovery. Second, plan. Third, execute. And fourth, the feedback loop of evaluate and iterate. But don't be overwhelmed by all of this. Like the old proverb states, the only way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time. I'll go through each section and break it down into easy steps for you to do, and we'll do that by starting with the discovery phase. I can't underscore how important the discovery phase is to SEO. It's in this phase you'll lay the foundation on what your overall focus will be for your SEO strategy. There are 3 things you'll consider as you begin this phase. First, what exactly is your website promising search visitors? Next, where does your website stand with the search engines, or truly Google, when it comes to its digital health status? Finally, how is your industry's SEO fingerprint different from all other industries? When starting the discovery phase of your SEO strategy, the very first place you need to start is with your own website. A good way to kick off your effort here is to complete an SEO survey. I have a 25-question survey that you can use. This survey will assist you in gaining deeper insights on the site you'll be working on. Obviously, this survey is immensely helpful when working with a client, but even if you're doing SEO on your own site, this survey will help you. Shortly, we're going to talk about 3 questions from the survey that will be a great help in providing direction to your website. So pause the video for a moment and answer the survey questions to the best of your knowledge. Now that you've done the survey, I recommend spending a solid hour just clicking through your own website. You'd be surprised how much you learn about a site by surfing it. Take notes on areas in the site that are confusing or quirky. The more familiar you are with the website, the easier it is to create a tailored SEO plan for it. As mentioned in the previous module, I'm using devonsupertramp.com as my example. The first thing I did with Devon's site was start clicking on the navigation. Where did each link take me to? For example, when I clicked on stock footage, instead of staying on Devin's site, I was actually pushed to a different website not owned by Devin. You can see that I'm now on Adobe's stock footage page. Devin is partnering with Adobe to sell his content, but a first-time visitor to his website might be confused by the different website designs, or they might not even know they left Devin's website. All of this I noted to later speak to Devin's team about. Next, I'd like to see exactly how Google looks at a site. You can do this by searching the full domain in Google. If your domain isn't found in the top 10 results, then it means potentially two things. One, the domain is extremely new on the internet, or two, that the site has been penalized by Google. This means that Google, for whatever reason, feels you are violating their rules. Looking at devinsupertramp.com, we can see his website is number 1. What we can also see is the other results Google feels are associated with his domain name. If you're doing your social media right, Google should be showing your social media accounts relatively close to your domain. Not surprising, we see that Google believes Devin's social media presence on YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Wikipedia, Facebook, LinkedIn are all part of his overall domain brand, which of course they are. There are several other ways you can search in Google to gain further insights on a domain. One way to dig deeper into Google is by using search operators. Search operators are commands that help you filter and refine your search results. One powerful search operator is the site:. The Google operator will only show results from the website you put in the search query. For example, when going back to Google, we can do a search like site:devinsupertramp.com. We can see that Google has found and indexed 23 pages from Devin's site. Doing this search operator allows you to quickly see the different pages you'll need to further optimize, or, as I found several times, pages that have been published on a website but don't appear in the search results. Another great search operator is the in-text query. In my first meeting with Devin, he told me that he wanted his website to be known for the terms 4K and 8K footage. When I do the search query site:devinsupertramp.com in text, 4K footage, there are 4 results. And when I do the same search but with 8K footage, Google shows also only 4 results. Let's consider one more, which is the exact match operator, which uses quotation marks in front and at the end of a phrase. I use this operator to see if the content on my site has been plagiarized. So let's jump over to Devin's site and let's find some content that we can check. So let's just take this paragraph here and let's put quotation marks around it. And we can see right here, this is a good indicator that no other website other than what we see here with Devin's has that content. So we can see by this being bolded saying, hey, this is similar, and it's actually the same. But if you look down here, we don't see any other websites that are like that. Unfortunately, it's not uncommon for other websites to plagiarize content, which can be a little bit thorny later on in SEO when we discuss duplicate content. But for now, it's a good practice to just check to see, what's out there and if anyone else has similar content to yours. Now that you've dug around your website and looked at how Google sees it, your next step is to consider how your site presents itself to users and also the search engine. It's important to be clear on what users can expect from your website, and it's something that some websites really struggle with, such as this site, lingscars.com, or this site, dokimoz.org. Keenly knowing and being able to articulate your site's expectations will actually play a big role later in your SEO strategy. To help you get started in this endeavor, you're going to return to the survey you filled out earlier. In particular, we want to look at these questions. In 1 to 2 sentences, what is the main purpose of your website? Who are the primary individuals or organizations that your website helps? And how does your website help these individuals or organizations? You can boil these questions down to: who are you? Who do you help? And how do you help? Let's look at some websites who do a great job at answering these questions. We can see that the Quanta Group quickly tells us who they are by boldly announcing that they are passionate residential investors. And if that's not clear enough, they share with us exactly why they are passionate about what they do. On the homepage of ECAP Partners, they actually state multiple times who they help by saying, "We help entrepreneurs and shareholders, and we assist startups." Maybe it's because OASIN has been around for almost 150 years, or the fact that they're a utility company. In any case, they do an epic job clearly and concisely sharing with their users exactly how they help. Right away, they state they give people control over managing their water. They even provide icons to quickly convey how they help. However, my all-time favorite website that quickly answers all these questions is rollpark.us. They immediately state who they are by telling us they are a commercial parking company that specializes in geotextile. On their website, they actually rotate out right here 5 different audiences they help. Finally, they share 4 reasons they are better and in effect state how they help. I'd say that Rollpark hits these 3 questions in a way that is short, easy to understand, and to the point. You might wonder why these 3 questions help with SEO. I'll let the Cheshire Cat in the children's book Alice's Adventures in Wonderland answer your question. Would you tell me, please, which way I ought to go from here? That depends a good deal on where you want to get to. I don't much care where. Then it doesn't matter which way you go. This profound quote teaches us that we need to know our destination before we begin our journey, or it doesn't matter where we go. Look at how you answered your SEO survey. Is it clear who you are, who you help, and how you help them? If not, I'd further refine your answers because you're going to need strong and clear answers for our next step. Now that you're familiar with your website, next in the discovering phase is to consider your website's health. A common mistake businesses make in SEO is to pattern their search strategy after a competitor who has strong rankings. If your website doesn't have the metrics the search engines require, it'll be difficult for you to compete at the same level as a business who does. For this reason, it's important to know exactly your standing with Google. You do this by considering the competitor health status of your website. This is an exercise I've personally created for my clients and have done over the years. Ultimately, you're wanting to know if your website's health is considered malnourished, weak, or healthy. I'll go into exactly what each of these health statuses mean. But first, we need to consider the metrics that determine your site's health, which is relevance and authority. Relevance considers how well your content answers a search query. Authority looks at the ranking strength of a web page. You can create all the content you want, and Google will find it. If you're not considered an authority, though, your content will not rank highly for the search terms you're desiring. The more authority your website has, the better you can rank relevant content. A strong SEO strategy considers where a website is weak in relevancy and authority and develops a plan to address these areas. This is where knowing the health of your website will help you get started in the right direction. There are some easy questions you can answer to determine your health, which we'll discuss now. However, to avoid being blinded by your own biases with your website, I'll also share with you some tools that can give you concrete data to either back up your personal analysis or show you where you were wrong. So, first, some quick questions. Does your website have little to no content, not known in your industry, and rarely has visitors from Google? If so, then it is likely that you have a malnourished website that the search engines find little value in. Another type of website that fits in the malnourished category is one that has a lot of content, but that content is not focused. Instead, it rambles all over the place and makes users and search engines confused when visiting. If your website falls into either of these areas, your SEO efforts should be developing strong, focused content that is unique and brings value to the topic your website covers. If your website doesn't fit this category, then the next question you should ask is, are you continually creating quality content, but are only ranking on low traffic search terms? Also, are you relatively unknown in your industry, meaning you haven't developed partnerships with other websites that link to your content, which stated earlier is known as backlinks? If so, then your website's health would be considered weak. Google is aware of you, but most likely it thinks your brand isn't strong enough to rank for any high trafficked terms. A common mistake you can make in this category is to concentrate completely on creating tons of content. It may be relevant and high quality, but it has no strength behind it. This strength comes instead by creating and developing a backlink strategy that attracts trustworthy websites in and out of your industry to link to you. The third category your website can be considered is healthy. Here you'll ask, is your website an industry leader? Are you talked about and known? Do other related websites naturally link to you? This is a good indication your website is considered a brand and has authority. It also means that developing relationships with other websites should be easier and happen more frequently without much effort on your end. However, a word of caution, a common misstep in this category is to shift your focus from building backlinks to amping your content creation efforts. Definitely, doing this will help you rank on more search terms, but it's likely you'll get better traction recognizing what your current content can do for you and putting your focus there. This is called content sculpting. Don't just be a machine pushing out an insane amount of content all the time. Even if you have the money, energy, and time to do this, a more thoughtful approach that leverages your current strengths can give you a better return on your efforts. Here's an easy way to summarize the three categories. With malnourished websites, Google doesn't really know much about you, if anything at all. With weak websites, Google is aware of you but doesn't trust you enough to send a lot of visitors your way. Finally, with healthy websites, Google considers you relevant and trustworthy and is willing to send you significant amounts of targeted traffic. There is one more category that I won't cover, but it's important to be aware of: the dead or dying website. This is a site that has been penalized by the search engines. Unfortunately, there could be a host of issues here, which requires an individualized solution that goes way beyond this course. If you are in this regrettable category, there is a thriving niche in the SEO industry that can take care of you. Okay, all of this is more theory than analytical. So let's look at how you can get some data when identifying the type of site you're working with. From what we have discussed, you want to consider four things: content focus, content depth, page strength, and domain strength, which ultimately is just relevance and authority. The three tools we're going to use are MozBar, Google Keyword Planner, and Screaming Frog, which are all free. So let's go ahead and jump in. According to Moving Traffic Media, quote, MozBar is a Chrome extension that shows you the page authority, domain authority, and spam score for any given domain or search engine results page, also known as SERP. You can also conduct page analysis and get the breakdown of the types of links that appear on a given page, end quote. If you're not familiar with Chrome extensions, check out this video, which will also show you how to install it. When we're looking at a website's health, we're primarily interested in MozBar's capability to give us a good idea on our website or web page's authority. The three MozBar metrics of page authority, domain authority, and spam score are what will best assist us. Let's look at each of these metrics. Page authority, or PA, is an estimate between 0 and 100 of a page's likelihood of ranking high in the SERPs based on its backlink metrics. Domain authority, or DA, is similar to page authority and is also estimated between 0 and 100 of the root domain's likelihood of ranking high in the SERPs compared to all the other domains that Moz has in its index. Finally, spam score is calculated using Moz's machine learning module. This is the measure of how much a given website has in common with websites that have been penalized or banned by Google. These three functions we'll be looking at as we work through the competitive health status. But MozBar has a lot of additional functionality you should check out since we'll be looking at this tool in later modules. When we do a surface look at Devin Supertramp using MozBar, we see that he has 325 backlinks, giving him a score of 38 page rank and a 43 domain authority with a 1% spam score. Now, all of this may seem low, but let's put it into perspective. Pluralsight, which has 1 million plus trusted and authoritative websites linking to it, has a page authority of 65 and a domain authority of 80 and a spam score of 1%. With an 80 domain authority, Pluralsight is considered a very, very powerful website. Yet Devin's 43 domain authority isn't bad either. In fact, if we were only considering that score, he'd beat out a lot of his competitors. Yet authority without relevance in SEO is a ship at sea without a helm. To really be a strong competitor, Devin's website needs to be strong also in relevance. So let's take a look at what can help us determine his relevance. Google has a great tool that's 100% free called Google Keyword Planner. To get started, go to ads.google.com. Here you'll see you'll need to have a Google account, which most people have by simply having a Gmail account or a YouTube account. You'll find that there's some great features with Google Keyword Planner that will help you with your SEO, particularly when you're trying to see how Google views your relevancy. However, when you begin to sign up, you're going to come across something like this. As you can see here, Google's not interested in you doing SEO and would rather you spend money on its ads. Yet there is a workaround to avoid Google's efforts to push you into doing Google Ads. So to get going, click Start Now. Here you'll be asked to log into your Google account. If you've never done Google Ads, you'll receive this prompt. Select the new Google Ads account. Now here's the important part. Don't choose any of the top 3 options. Select the small link here at the bottom of the page. Okay, I want to just pause for a moment because you might be running into a problem that I want to make you aware of. I jumped over here to the browser and you notice that that link that I showed previously is not there. What you need to do in order to see that link is expand your browser and you'll see that that link appears. And it's been this way for years. I don't know why they haven't changed it yet. Okay, once you go into expert mode, you're going to be taken to this screen here, and you'll want to click on this link at the bottom where it says create an account without a campaign. Okay, I now wanted to share with you another really weird quirk that you might run into. If you're on this page and you don't see any link like you should on this page, I ran into this exact same problem, and I'm not sure why it does this. I actually had to go create a new Gmail account and do it again in order to get that link. So if you're not seeing that link, it's another just really weird glitch. I don't know why they're having these glitches here, but you can't move forward with the keyword planner unless you want to set up a Google Ads campaign, which we don't. That's not what SEO is about. So make sure you have this link here, and once you click on that, you'll be taken to this page. Here you don't need to add or change any information, just select the submit button. And you're almost there. You now need to click the explore your account link. Now you'll select the tools and settings icon on the menu, and you should see a link to the keyword planner. I know this seems like a lot of trouble, but it's worth it. And we'll be using the Google Keyword Planner in the future, so this exercise does help. What we're mainly interested in here is discover new keywords. This shows you keywords that Google feels are related to your website or web page. Just click anywhere on this box and it'll expand to give you two options. Start with keywords and start with a website. Select the website option and enter the domain you're analyzing. We are wanting to look at use the entire domain. Now click Get Results. All right, we finally made it, but I don't want you to be confused about this tool. These aren't necessarily keywords that you're ranking on in Google. Rather, these keyword ideas are suggestion Google feels your site is related to because of the content it has indexed from the website or web page. This is truly powerful because you're able to unequivocally know how Google looks at your site or any given page on it. I recommend going through the keywords and seeing if you agree. This will help you determine if your content is focused on the topics you want to be known by Google. For DevinSupertramp.com, we can see that Google is only reporting back keyword ideas on Devin's brand, and 21 keyword ideas is not that much data. I would definitely categorize Devin's website relevance as malnourished. Now, before we go to look at our final health metric, you need to understand there are a lot of features here to play with, and I encourage you to do so. For this exercise, you're really just trying to understand how Google views your website. One thing I do, particularly if there are a lot of keyword ideas, is download all the data into a Google Sheet and see what I can learn from on how Google views me. If I'm seeing a lot of terms I don't care about, I know it's time to double down on developing more intentional, focused content. Let me provide a quick case study. For my SEO class, a former student of mine named Cameron was frustrated that his pet rat website, Raising Rodents, wasn't doing better for the pet search terms he was going after. When he put his website into Google's Keyword Planner, he quickly found out why. Instead of Google seeing his website as a pet site, all the terms in Keyword Planner showed that Google felt this was an extermination website. No matter what SEO Cameron would have done, would have convinced Google this wasn't the case. In the end, Cameron abandoned the domain name Raising Rodents and purchased another domain name that had pet in it so that the search spiders could understand that people really did have pet rats. Okay, so now you know whether your content is relevant. But how valuable is this relevant content? There's not a great tool to measure the value of your content, but a fair indicator for search engines is the content length. There are so many studies that show Google favoring what is called long-form content. Basically, this is in-depth and insightful content that is 1,500 plus words. Do you see the flaw here by assessing your content this way? Not all content is text-based. In fact, there are so many ways we can express ourselves online that go way beyond text-based content. Unfortunately, this is the easiest way for Google to determine the value of your content. Do you still have videos, podcasts, infographics? Definitely. But you should absolutely use text to further enrich this content and provide an easy way for Google to know what each of your pages offer. To do this, we're going to use the spider crawling software Screaming Frog. A spider is a piece of software that crawls around on a website, harvesting data and presenting it to the owner of the spider. Google has a fleet of these spiders, and it uses them to index the internet as much as it possibly can for use in the search results. Screaming Frog is a mostly free desktop application spider that you can download and run from your local computer regardless of platform. It fetches SEO data that can help you better analyze any website. This URL will take you where you can download Screaming Frog. Once you've unpacked the software and launched it, your next step is to give it the website you want the tool to analyze. You do this by entering the website name and hitting Start. The feature we're looking at in Screaming Frog is the word count of every page crawled, which you'll see right here on the internal tab. You'll probably see when you do this a lot more data because I've stripped down to only the word count. If you're having a difficult time finding it, you'll see right here this tab, Content, also has that information. After you find the data, you're going to export it. However, before you do, I suggest removing all the excess data you don't need by clicking on this small little plus sign. You can see I've already clicked off everything that's on there, but there's a lot of great information here, and I do suggest looking at it. But for your competitive health status, we're only interested in the word count, which you'll find almost to the bottom of the page right there. And everything else you can click off. I've exported this data into a Google Sheet by clicking on the export and selecting Google Sheets. You can name it whatever you want and then click Save. Once in Google Sheets, I copy the column that shares the word count, and here I've created another tab and put that content in and divide it by the amount of pages that Devon's site has. So you can see right here the equation. You'll notice that Devon's word count is considerably low. A normal website on the internet wants to average 5 to 1,000 words per page. However, you also have to consider the industry Devon is in. Video creation websites like Devon's are usually heavily image and video driven and often is light on text on their pages. We'll talk about the importance of your industry in a minute, and it's important to be careful about making overarching assumptions like having light text means your website isn't strong. Yet what I want to point out here is that not only is Devon shy on text, but he also doesn't have that many web pages. This means Devon is giving Google very little data about what he wants to rank on. When I analyzed Devon's strong SEO competitors, most of them had 500 plus pages of content, but only averaged 200 to 300 words a page. They offered to Google what Devon didn't, which is troves of data. The whole reason we're looking at all this data is to better understand your website's competitive health status. We started with Moz and looked at the authority of the website. For Devon, we particularly looked at his domain authority, which was 44. Next, we considered his domain relevancy using Google's keyword planner. Here we see that Devon only ranked on his brand name and not much else. If Devon wanted only people to find him by his company name, this would be alright, but rarely is this the case for any company. So his overall relevancy is weak. Finally, we wanted to see what value Devon's website content offered. We did this through using Screaming Frog's word count, which is a rudimentary way of assessing the site's value, but it did share with us some critical data. First, Devon didn't have a lot of text for the search spiders to understand what Devon was offering to a user. This might have been okay considering that Devon's true value comes from his videography. But another serious weakness his site had was that he hardly had any pages. So very little text and low volume of pages makes a recipe that shows Google his website has very little value to offer the user. So here's a page from a worksheet I give my students. It shows that Devon's website is malnourished and not a strong competitor. The more I do SEO, the more I realize that there are SEO nuances that change from industry to industry. In each industry, I have found that there are differences from other industries, but similarities among competitors in the same industry. For example, let's consider videographers, photographers, and musicians who are all in the creative space of business. SEO for videographers looks at sharing the video transcript on the site. They also have videos on hosting websites like YouTube or Vimeo, and it's not uncommon that there is branding done for a video created, but different branding done for a videographer. Next, SEO for photographers looks at optimizing each of their photographs. They can be on a photo hosting site like Flickr, but it's not essential like what we see with videographers. And the branding is often done just on the photographer and not the different pictures he or she takes. Finally, let's look at musicians. I've worked with several musicians on their SEO, and it's different from the other two creative spaces. Lyrics are more commonly found on third-party lyric sites than the actual musician's website. Similar to a videographer, it's important that the musician host his or her music on websites like Spotify, iTunes, and/or radio websites. Finally, branding is done on the actual musician, on a single song, and on a collection of songs. So as you can see, the SEO rules for one industry may be different in another industry. So I encourage people to research their industry and see what the SEO best practices are. The easiest way to do this is to do a search like SEO for videographers, or to use search operators like Untitled or file type. So here are a couple more pages from the worksheet I give my students when doing the discovery phase. You can see here that I have found a great article about doing SEO in the film industry. I also have my students review 3 competitors to see what similarities each of the websites have. Here are the insights I found with Devon's competitors. 2 insights particularly stood out to me. First, that all 3 websites showcase their company LinkedIn page. Devon doesn't focus on doing videos for consumers like weddings, but rather all his videos are done for actual businesses. So LinkedIn is an obvious social network to be on for him. Second was that each of his competitors had their business address on their website. This tells me that they are wanting the search engines to know that they are targeting local customers. So to recap, we looked at how your website builds an offering by considering who you are, who do you help, and how do you help them. Then we considered that to do your competitive health status, you need to do a deep dive into relevance and authority. This is done by using 3 SEO tools: MozBar, Google Keyword Planner, and Screaming Frog. Finally, you learned that every industry might have some critical differences when approaching SEO, and that the best treasure trove in learning this is your direct competitors. To conclude this module, here are some action items you can take. So that's everything for the discovery phase. I will see you in the next module.